All right, welcome to another episode of the Rapture Hour. This edition is going to be called basically the Midnight Hour. Why? Because it's late at night and most people are probably in bed sleeping, except for those that are still thinking about life, eternity, what's going on around them, all this kind of stuff. So, we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive on the resurrection because, after all, that is the center of our faith in Jesus Christ, our faith as a Christian, as the body of Christ. So if you don't have the resurrection, if there's no such thing as a resurrection, like as in nobody's resurrected from the dead, then that means our faith is in vain. It's a waste of time. We're worse than any other faith out there. Because if there is no resurrection, I'm not talking about thousands of years in the future. I'm talking about right now. If there's no resurrection, then Jesus never rose from the dead. You have to get that. If you don't get that, the rapture, everything else is going to be foggy to you. But if you can grasp this concept that when we die in Christ, we are alive forever. We'll never die. If we believe in Jesus Christ, we'll never die. You have to get that because, again, we want to do a bit of a deep dive. We want to consume some meat tonight. Let's move away a little bit from the milk and cookies. Does Jesus love me? Does he not love me? All this kind of stuff. I'm a sinner, or whatever it is. Like we beat ourselves up, all this kind of stuff. But tonight we're gonna go a little bit deeper, and we're gonna eat steak tonight. So if you like this kind of thing, if you like going a little bit deeper, then this video is for you. So if you haven't yet, this is a good time to subscribe to this channel. Feel free to leave a comment, all this good stuff. So we're going to dive into the resurrection as it pertains to the Old Testament. And we're going to also talk about the resurrection as it pertains to the New Testament. And we're going to touch a little bit in Revelation, talk about the final judgment, the white throne judgment, what that means and all this kind of stuff. So let's just jump into, let's go, where's a good place? Let's start with one of the first types of resurrection, right? We're going to go to Genesis. There might be more. There's a lot, but this is a pretty big one right here. So we're going to read from Genesis 22, and this is Isaac to be offered as a sacrifice. And it came to pass after these things that God did tempt Abraham, said unto him, Abraham, and he said, Behold, I am here. And he said, Take now thy son, thy only son, Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains, which I will tell thee of. And Abraham rose up early in the morning. Remember, his name is Abraham now. He's the father of faith. And Abraham rose up early in the morning and saddled his ass and took two of his young men with him, two witnesses, if you will, and Isaac his son, and clave wood for the burnt offering, and rose up and went unto the place of which God had told him. Then on the third day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place afar off. And Abraham said unto his young men, Abide ye here with the ass, and I and the lad will go yonder and worship and come again unto you. That's how much faith this guy has. Said that we're going to go yonder and worship, and we're going to come back. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it upon Isaac his son, And he took the fire in his hand and a knife, and they went both of them together. And Isaac spake unto Abraham his father, and said, My father. And he said, Here I am, my son. And he said, Behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? And Abraham said, My son, God will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering. So they were both of them together. And they came to the place which God had told him of, and Abraham built an altar there, and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hand, and took the knife to slay his son. So you might be wondering right now, what the heck is going on here? Abraham is going to kill his only son, Isaac. That was the promise. He was the promise given to Abraham that his descendants were going to be blessed. For as much as you can count the dust of the earth, that's how many descendants you're going to have. And if you can count the heavens, if you can count the stars, you're going to have descendants up there as well, up in heaven, which is the church, the body of Christ. We have seats in heaven. We are seated in heavenly places. And Abraham stretched forth his hand and took the knife to slay his son. And the angel of the Lord called unto him out of heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. And he said, Lay not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him. For now I know that thou fearest God, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thy only son, from me. And Abraham lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered up him for a burnt offering in the stead of his son. And Abraham called the name of that place Jehovah-Jireh, as it is unto this day, in the mount of the Lord it shall be seen. So this is kind of interesting, because it's kind of obvious at first glance. It's like, okay, we call Abraham the father of many nations. We call him the father of faith, father of righteousness. It's like, but some of us can't wrap our head around the concept of the idea that Abraham is going to kill his only begotten son, slay him on the altar. It's confusing to us. Like, why would this guy do this? Why would he do this? Unless you come at it from the perspective of faith and belief. If you can approach it from that angle, then this gets far more interesting. Abraham was going to sacrifice his son for two reasons. First one, obviously, was to obey God. But the second one was because he believed that God was able to raise him up again. That's interesting in itself. Sometimes we kind of miss this. This is the faith. This is the level. This is the degree that Abraham had. He had the faith to believe that God could raise up, God the Father could raise up his son Isaac, his only begotten son, from the dead. Who else does that remind you of? Of course, it's Jesus Christ. So Abraham had the faith that God was going to raise up his only son. And God said to him, look, I now know that you're not going to hold anything back from me. So you get your son back. And I'm going to do one better. I'm going to give my son. I wouldn't expect anybody to do something that I'm not willing to do first. So there's no way God was going to let Abraham be the first one to sacrifice his son for all of humanity. So I believe this is one of the reasons why God stopped him right away. He said, okay, I see your faith. You're willing to do the same thing that I'm going to do. That is to offer up my son to save everyone, not to die. That's weird. But to save everyone. That is one of the first instances that we see of a resurrection, because Abraham had the faith. It talks about this in Hebrews, that Abraham had the faith because he knew that God would raise him from the dead. Why? Because God promised him a seed. God never lies. So if God never lies, then if you believe that, if you believe that God never lies, then it's not a problem for Abraham to do what he was going to do. To some people, it sounds barbaric. Why would a father do that? They skip over this part. But if you think about it, that God is in the business of resurrection, that is his DNA. That is who God is. God is life. He created Adam out of the dust of the earth. What happens to us when we die? Our bodies turn to dust. God took the dust from the earth and made a man and breathed into his soul, and he lived. In some ways, this is your first resurrection, if you will. I don't want to get all crazy here, but the symbolism is crazy. You can't ignore it. You can't ignore it. Because we turn to dust. When we die, our bodies get corrupted. They get eaten by worms, and we turn to dust. God used dust, create a living soul. The first Adam. Jesus is the second Adam. We're going deep. I'm telling you, we're going deep here. Right, let's go to Hebrews 11. 11, verse 17. By faith, Abraham, when he was tried, offered up Isaac. And he that had received the promises offered up his only son, his only begotten son. His only son, because the promises are over. That means God is a liar if he dies, right? Or of whom it was said, then in Isaac thy seed be called. In Isaac. So if Isaac is dead, there is no seed. There is no many nations on earth or in heaven. It is over. So Abraham had to have faith that God was going to raise him from the dead, counting that God was able to raise him even from the dead, from whence he received him in a figure. By faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau concerning things to come. So it goes on and on. It's kind of interesting. All these people were looking for something in the future, a different country, which is kind of fascinating. Right, let's go to another resurrection in the Old Testament, First Kings. And I'm going somewhere with this. I'm going somewhere, but I got to build Got to build this up a little bit for you guys. Hopefully you get excited by this. Hopefully this is exciting to you. First Kings 17:17. All right. So this is a story about a widow that fed Elijah. And for doing that, basically, because she was going to basically, what was she going to do here? This was where I believe she was going to just basically starve herself, I think. Yeah, they're going to gather some sticks, eat the sticks, and then die. So he said, fetch me a prey, a little water vessel that I may drink. She went to fetch it, called her, bring me a prey, a morsel of bread. And she said, I don't have any, don't have a cake, handful of meal, barrel, all that stuff. We were going to eat it, eat the 2 sticks, and then die. Elijah said unto her, fear not, do as thou said, but bring me a little cake first. So feed Elijah first, all this kind of stuff. So anyways, verse 17. It came to pass after these things that the son of the woman, the mistress of the house, fell sick, and his sickness was so sore that there was no breath left in him. And she said unto Elijah, what have I to do? What have I to do with thee, O thou man of God? Art thou come unto me to call my sin to remembrance and to slay my son? That's where she was at with her faith. She thought, man, this is the greatest practical joke on earth. I have a son. I fed Elijah, and now my son's dead. What kind of a joke is this? And he said unto her, give me thy son. He took him out of her bosom, carried him up into a loft, where he abode, and laid him upon his own bed. He cried unto the Lord and said, oh my God, hast thou also brought evil upon the widow with whom I sojourned by slaying her son? Question mark. So Elijah didn't have too much faith here. And he stretched himself upon the child 3 times and cried unto the Lord and said, O Lord my God, I pray thee, let this child soul come into him. What's interesting about stretch himself, it's almost like he formed a cross in some ways over the child. Jesus told Peter that you're going to be stretched out. You're basically going to be laid out somewhere where you don't want to go, signifying the type of death. He was going to get stretched out as well, like Jesus was stretched out on a cross. But tradition has it that Peter got crucified upside down. Don't know. Sounds like an interesting theory. Not sure about it. It's possible. It's very possible. And the Lord heard the voice of Elijah, and the soul of the child came to him again, and he revived. And Elijah took the child and brought him down out of the chamber into the house and delivered him unto his mother. And Elijah said, see, thy son liveth. The woman said to Elijah, now by this I know that thou art a man of God, and that the word of the Lord is in thy mouth. So here's a resurrection right here. A child raised to life. Child raised to life. Let's go to 2 Kings 4:18. And when the child was grown, it fell on a day, and he went out to his father, to the reapers, and he said unto his father, my head, my head. And he said to the lad, carry him to his mother. Good father, eh? And when he had taken him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her knees till noon, and then he died. Very sad. She went up and laid on him the bed on the man of God, and shut the door upon him, and went out. And he searched for Elijah. She called unto her husband and said, send me, I pray thee, one of the young men, one of the asses, that I may run to the man of God and come again. And he said, wherefore wilt thou go to him today? It is neither new moon nor Sabbath. And she said, it shall be well. It's interesting that Paul tells us that we're not supposed to pay attention to all that stuff. It's like, don't pay attention to the new moon, Sabbaths, all this kind of stuff. That drove a lot of Jews crazy. Shadow's ass said to servant, drive forward. So she found the servant of God. Let's just fast forward. Her soul is vexed within her, and the Lord hath hid it from me, and hath not told me. Then he said, did I desire a son of my Lord? Did I not say, do not deceive me? Then he said to Gezerah, gird thy loins and take my staff, and go thy way. If you meet any, salute him not, and if any salute thee, answer him not, and lay my staff upon the face of the child. The woman wouldn't agree to that, though. She said instead, the mother of the child said, as the Lord liveth, and as my soul liveth, I will not leave thee. And he arose and followed her. Who's that remind you of? Probably reminds you of Elisha, because he did the same thing to Elijah, I think 2 or 3 times. He said, I will not leave you. And then I think the 3rd time Elijah said, what do you want from me? It's like, I want double your portion. Whatever you have, I want double. Elijah said, if you see me get carried away, get raptured, then it'll be requested to you. Double portion. Gizzo passed on before them, laid the staff. No, there was neither voice nor hearing. When he went again to meet him, told him, saying, the child is not awaked. Elijah was come into the house, and behold, the child was dead, laid upon his bed, went and therefore shut the door, prayed unto the Lord. He went upon the child, put his mouth upon his mouth, his eyes to his eyes, hands upon his hands. He stretched himself, again symbolizing the cross. The flesh of the child waxed warm. Then he returned, walked up in the house to and fro, stretched himself upon him. The child sneezed 7 times. Don't know what that means. Excuse me. And the child opened his eyes, called Gezel, and said, call the Shunammite woman. And he called her, and when she was come into him, she said, take up thy son. She went in and fell at his feet and bowed herself to the ground and took up her son and went out. So, another resurrection here. Who is doing these resurrections? You might be asking this question. It's obvious, though, right? Isn't it? God the Father. God the Father is resurrecting these people. I'm not going to go into all the instances, but there's several references about God resurrecting people from the dead. I want to go to Daniel chapter 12. This is kind of interesting. Daniel 12. Daniel 12, 2 and 3. At that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be written in the book. Oh, that's interesting. Shall be delivered, everyone. I think that's the Lamb's book of life. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake. Some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. Where do we see that? Well, we see that in the book of Revelation. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. Boy, that sure sounds like the church, don't it? But thou, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. We have that today, by the way. So basically, the angel's saying, you know what? He said, go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed to the time of the end. So these words get sealed up till when? Till the time of the end, which I believe is what John is reading on Patmos. He is getting the same vision that Daniel had, and he's writing it out. It was given to him, given to Jesus Christ by God the Father. Jesus Christ gave it to his angel, and his angel gave it to John. John wrote it down, wrote down everything he saw, which is very similar. This is why there's a lot of parallels with the book of Daniel. Just John goes into greater detail because God wasn't interested in showing this all to Daniel. Daniel didn't have to understand when, where, why, all the stuff. It was too far in the future. But it's interesting. Again, there shall be time of trouble, which we know is Jacob's trouble, and at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be written in the book. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall wake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame, to everlasting contempt. So we have two types of resurrections: resurrections to everlasting life. So it's one resurrection, but you understand what I'm saying. Two ways to go. Some to shame and everlasting contempt, some to everlasting life. So they're resurrected and they go this way and this way based on who's written in the book of life. If your name is in the book of life, you're going this way. If it's not written in the book of life, you're going here. So if we go over to Revelation 20, you see the same thing play out at the very end. This is the book of life. This is the exact book, I believe, that was in Daniel. I saw a great white throne, and him that sat on it, from whose face the earth and the heaven fled away, and there was found no place for them. Who? These people that are being resurrected. I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God, and the books were open. And another book was open, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books according to their works. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them, and were judged every man according to their works. Who's the they? Those that came up from the sea, the dead that came up from the sea. Boy, that sure looks like before the flood. All the wicked people, everyone except Noah and his family, because really the whole world was corrupt. There wasn't anyone good. So the sea gave up the dead which were in it. And death, why do you think Legion, if you will, didn't want to go into the deep? Because one day they're going to be brought up to be judged. All angels, everyone's going to be judged. Death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them, and they were judged every man according to their works. And death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. Whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. I think that was all those people that died in the flood because they were all wicked. They have to have their day in judgment as well. That was to get rid of them because they're causing harm, and they were in the process of making the Messiah impossible to come This is why Noah had to be rescued. If God didn't do that, then all the flesh would have been corrupted, including Noah and his family. So we hear that the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them. They were judged every man according to their works. So these people are being judged. Now, I'm not 100% sure that that's the people from the flood. But if you think about it, it kind of makes sense in some ways. Death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death, and whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. So based on their works, people that were risen from the dead, from the sea, were judged according to their works. Probably was bad news for them. Bad news, and they probably weren't written in the book of life because their DNA was corrupt. They were mixing with Nephilim and all kinds of stuff. Animals, beasts, everything corrupted. So I believe that's one of the judgments there. Because over here, just a little bit earlier, I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God, and the books were open, another book was open. So you got two books open, looks like. Book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books according to their works. So they're judged according to what they've done until the day that they die. So the one that were in the sea gave up the dead, and they were judged according to their works. And if their name wasn't written in the book of life, they get introduced to the second death, which is they get tossed into the lake of fire. Those are the people that's names aren't in the book of life. So if you go back to Satan being bound for 1,000 years, I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain, he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, bound him 1,000 years, and cast him into the bottomless pit, shut him up, and set a seal upon him that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years be fulfilled, and after that he must be loosed a little season. I saw thrones, and they that sat on them, and judgment was given unto them. So there's thrones in heaven, and judgment was given unto them, which is interesting because we have seats in heavenly places. We will be judging angels. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus, for the word of God, which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands, and they lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. So the people that survive the tribulation, or I shouldn't say survive, get martyred in the tribulation, get to reign with Christ for 1,000 years. But the rest of the dead did not live again until the 1,000 years were finished. This is their first resurrection. So anybody that is not raised from the dead is part of the second resurrection, which is what? The great white throne judgment. And it looks like it's all the people that are not written in the Lamb's book of life. Because if you're written in the Lamb's book of life, you're in heaven. You're alive. That's what it looks like here, because God is a God of the resurrection. He's able to bring people back to life. So look at this here. And I'll wrap this up. Let's go to John. Hopefully this will put this all to bed here. What we're talking about here. Verse 17, chapter 5, verse 17. Actually, you can even do 16. And therefore did the Jews persecute Jesus and sought to slay him, because he had done these things on the Sabbath day. But Jesus answered him, my Father worketh hereto, and I work. Therefore the Jews sought more to kill him, because he not only had broken the Sabbath, but said also that God was his Father, making himself equal with God. Then answered Jesus and said unto them, Verily, verily, I say unto you, that the Son can do nothing of himself, but what he seeth the Father do. For what things soever he doeth, these also doeth the Son likewise. So Jesus is saying, I only do what I see my Father do. So my Father raises people from the dead. I raise people from the dead. Why? Because I'm a quickening spirit. For the Father loveth the Son, and the Son and sheweth him all things that himself doeth. So God the Father shows his Son everything that he does. And he will shew him greater works than these, that ye may marvel. For as the Father raiseth up the dead and quicketh them, so this is God the Father raising people from the dead, even so the Son quickeneth whom he will. So Jesus is able to raise anyone from the dead that he wants to. For the Father judges no man, but hath committed all judgment to the Son. So he gave everything over to Jesus to judge us, that all men should honor the Son. So this is where we get the verse, for God so loved the world that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but live, but have everlasting life. Get a little tired at midnight. That all men should honor the Son, even as they honor the Father. He that honoreth not the Son honoreth not the Father which hath sent him. Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that heareth my word and believeth on him that sent me hath everlasting life, and shall not come into condemnation, but is passed from death unto life. So, if you can get this, I know we're going heavy. God is giving all judgment unto Jesus, meaning Jesus can do what he wants with these dead people. So Jesus is saying, if you believe in me, I'll raise you up from the dead. When? The second you die. Why? Because I've tasted death so that you don't have to. So when you die, I'm going to raise you up. That's the promise. Because I'm the resurrection. And that's the deal. If you believe in me, you get to be resurrected. Why? Because my Father does this kind of thing. My Father does it, I do it. I only do what I see my Father do. Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that heareth my word and believeth on him that sent me has everlasting life, and shall not come into condemnation, but he passed from death unto life. Verily, verily, I say unto you, the hour is coming. Oh, there's that hour word. And now is when the dead shall hear the voice of the Son of God, for they that hear shall live. Again, verily, verily, this is very important. I say unto you, the hour is coming, and now is. Why? Because he is the resurrection. So it's right here. When the dead shall hear the voice of the Son of God, and they that hear shall live. So all those that will hear him, his sheep. For as the Father hath life in himself, like a quickening spirit, so hath he given to the Son to have life in himself, and hath given him authority to execute judgment. That means he can make a decision on his own. That's what judgment is. Jesus can decide what he wants to do because he is the Son of Man, meaning he was born as a human being. So now he has complete authority. Marvel not at this, for the hour is coming in which all that are in the graves shall hear his voice and shall come forth. They that have done good unto resurrection of life, and they that have done evil unto the resurrection of damnation. So everyone will hear his voice. And when they do, You're going to be raised to go one of two directions. One, to go to the resurrection of life. The other one, until the resurrection of damnation. Why? Because you're not in the Lamb's book of life. I can of my own self do nothing. As I hear, I judge. And my judgment is just, because I seek not my own will, but the will of the Father which hath sent me. Yeah. So that's pretty cool. Jesus is the resurrection. He rose Lazarus from the dead. God the Father was raising people from the dead. It's actually quite amazing. I'll continue here. I think. Yeah, this is one that's kind of interesting too. Last one. All that the Father giveth me shall come to me, and him that cometh to me I will no ways cast out. For I came down from heaven not to do mine own will, but the will of him that sent me. And this is the Father's will which has sent me, of all which he hath given me, that I should lose nothing, but should raise it up again at the last day. What is the last day? Well, kind of looks like the last day of your life. When you die, you will be resurrected from the dead. Because every man is appointed once to die. Everyone has an appointment. And on that last day of your appointment, you're going to raise from the dead if you believe that Jesus is the Son of God. That's the only catch. Because those that don't, when they hear his voice, are going to be raised up to be judged, and their names are not going to be found in the Lamb's book of life, and they're going to be tossed into the lake of fire. That's what it looks like from here. And this is the will of him that sent me, that everyone that seeth the Son and believeth on him may have everlasting life. That's the catch. You have to believe in Jesus Christ, and I will raise him at the last day. The last day of your life. Don't know how else you can look at it. Because again, when you see in Revelation, you see two groups of people that are being resurrected because they're being beheaded and all this kind of stuff. And then the other ones are being resurrected. Let's just make sure I'm saying this right here. Revelation 22. Just to make sure here. All right. One more time. Saw the dead, great and small, stand before God, and the books were open. Another book was open, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books according to their works. And also the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and hell gave up the dead which were in them, and they were judged every man according to their works. So you got the dead and great and small, and then you have those from the sea being raised up, and death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. Whosever name was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. I think it's all those people. Why? Because they're not part of the first resurrection. They don't believe in Jesus Christ. They're judged according to their works. So if you think about the sea giving up the dead, what were their works? Evil works. So they're not found in the Lamb's book of life. Boom. John is saying, but the rest of the dead lived not again till 1,000 years were finished. This is the first resurrection. So everyone that believes in Jesus Christ is a part of that first resurrection. There's only two. You're either going to be raised to go into everlasting life because you hear his name, you hear him call you, or you're going to be raised to go to everlasting fire. There's no in between. You're either part of the first resurrection, which is you believe in Jesus Christ, or you don't. If you don't, you're going to be raised, you're going to hear his voice, and you're going to be raised, and you're going to be judged on those books. And your name isn't going to be found in the book of life, off to the lake of fire. All right, that's it for today's video. We are again talking about the rapture. This is why we believe in a pre-tribulation rapture. Again, to summarize, because we believe that Jesus is the resurrection. And Paul, according to Paul, he's coming back. The Lord's appearing. He's coming back to take us up with him. Why? So that we don't have to go through Jacob's trouble. I've explained that in other videos, but we're not part of Jacob's trouble. We're the church. We're the body of Christ. We're not ordained to wrath. All right, that's it for today's video. Hopefully you got something out of it. If you have, feel free to leave a message. Feel free to share your thoughts. And as always, don't forget to subscribe. See you in another video. Bye for now.